There is a devastating psychological epidemic currently disguised as modern self-care. Right now, millions of individuals are deliberately cutting off their closest friends, violently avoiding minor conflicts, and retreating into absolute isolation, firmly believing they are simply protecting their energy. But in the clinical reality of behavioral psychology and human evolution, this is not a healthy boundary. It is a catastrophic biological collapse. Your nervous system is currently tricking you into building an invisible, suffocating prison. If you do not recognize the precise psychological failure I am about to expose in this clinical breakdown, you will permanently lose the cognitive ability to connect with other human beings. The modern wellness industry has actively lied to you, and today, we are going to meticulously tear down that highly profitable deception, piece by piece. For years, mainstream pop psychology has aggressively marketed isolation as the ultimate form of emotional intelligence and mental health preservation. You are constantly told to ghost toxic people, walk away from uncomfortable conversations, and retreat into your own highly curated, completely sterile safe space. You are actively allowing your amygdala, the brain's primal threat detection center, to completely hijack your rational decision-making process. Every single time you walk away from a mild interpersonal conflict or silently cut a friend off, your brain releases a tiny, highly addictive hit of dopamine. You feel a momentary sense of relief, but that relief is a toxic psychological manipulation you are playing on yourself to avoid the painful reality of personal growth. Listen to me very carefully, because the neurological window to reverse this biological wiring is closing more rapidly than you can possibly comprehend. Every single day you rely on this fake emotional safety, your brain permanently prunes the neural pathways required for empathy, conflict resolution, and human connection. Neuroplasticity is a double-edged sword. The psychological damage compounds daily. If you look away or close this video right now, you are consciously choosing voluntary social extinction. And the covert manipulators in your immediate circle will use this exact biological blind spot to replace you. You must understand the next phase of this psychological trap today before your isolation becomes neurologically irreversible. Why does avoiding people cause trauma responses? Let us clinically dissect what is actually happening inside your central nervous system when you decide to lock yourself away. Human beings are biologically hardwired for tribal survival. For millions of years of evolutionary history, isolation meant guaranteed physical death. Your brain requires unpredictable social friction to maintain cognitive behavioral resilience in the exact same way your physical muscles require heavy resistance to maintain mass. When you completely remove yourself from unpredictable social dynamics to supposedly protect your energy, you are literally starving your brain of necessary psychological stress. You are creating a sterile emotional environment that destroys your natural defenses. In the fields of clinical depression and complex trauma recovery, this phenomenon is officially classified as maladaptive isolation. You genuinely believe you are building an impenetrable Stoic fortress of solitude, but you are actually locking yourself inside a psychological sensory deprivation tank that is slowly driving your nervous system into absolute chaos. Are you setting boundaries or using maladaptive isolation? Because you have successfully eliminated all external friction from your daily life, your biological baseline for emotional trauma violently drops to absolute zero. This means that eventually even the slightest social inconvenience, a delayed text message, a minor disagreement at your workplace, a slightly critical look from an acquaintance, will trigger a massive cortisol spike and a full-blown physiological stress response. You have not protected your energy. You have made your nervous system incredibly fragile. You have mathematically manufactured an artificial psychological vulnerability. This explains the dark irony behind the people who constantly preach about protecting their energy on social media. They are almost always the most easily drained, highly reactive, and emotionally unstable people in any given room. Their emotional intelligence is fundamentally stunted because they flatly refuse to participate in the mandatory friction of human relationships. They have confused emotional regulation with emotional avoidance, and that cognitive distortion is destroying their baseline mental health. Let us dive deeper into the neurochemistry of this self-inflicted damage. When you engage in healthy conflict, your brain learns to regulate adrenaline and cortisol. You develop a psychological callus, but the moment you adopt the philosophy of cutting everyone off the second they make you feel uncomfortable, you strip your brain of its ability to self-soothe. You become entirely dependent on external control. You begin to micromanage your environment, curating your friendships so aggressively that anyone who challenges your worldview is immediately discarded as toxic. This is not setting a boundary, this is narcissism disguised as self-care. You are demanding that the entire world conform to your extreme emotional fragility, and when it inevitably doesn't, you retreat further into your invisible prison. You are constructing an echo chamber where your own cognitive dissonance becomes your only source of absolute truth, blinding you to your own toxic behavioral patterns. You will absolutely never hear this clinical reality from mainstream life coaches or self-help gurus, because keeping you fragile, isolated, and constantly seeking validation is the backbone of a $4.4 trillion wellness economy. This is the carefully hidden behavioral architecture that the top 1% of elite communicators use to dominate social hierarchies, while the masses hide in their bedrooms consuming endless self-care content. If you do not master this exclusive biological reality in the next 2 minutes, you will remain their highly profitable prey forever. You simply cannot afford to miss how manipulators are actively exploiting your physical absence to destroy your reputation right now. How do manipulators exploit your need for peace? Let us examine the incredibly dark psychology of the specific individuals who silently applaud your new isolated lifestyle. Covert narcissists, Machiavellian personalities, and highly skilled manipulators absolutely love it when you decide to protect your energy by cutting off your entire support system. When you isolate yourself, you are doing the predator's job for them. You are willingly removing the external voices of reason that could warn you about psychological manipulation, financial exploitation, and deeply toxic environments. A predator's primary tactic is isolation, and you are handing them the keys to your cage. You mistakenly believe you are establishing firm boundaries, but true boundaries require active, highly uncomfortable confrontation. Real boundaries require you to stand your ground, look another human being directly in the eye, and verbally enforce a strict rule of engagement. Ghosting someone, blocking their number, or quietly fading away into the background is not a boundary. It is a biological escape hatch for the emotionally weak. By removing yourself from the equation, you leave a power vacuum. The people who genuinely cared about you are left confused and hurt, eventually moving on. Meanwhile, the manipulators in your environment use your sudden withdrawal to rewrite the narrative. Because you are not there to defend yourself or engage in the necessary social friction, they label you as unstable, unreliable, or arrogant. Your absence becomes their greatest weapon. You thought you were preserving your peace, but you actually surrendered all your social leverage. You abandoned your territory, and in the primal hierarchy of human behavior, abandoned territory is immediately conquered by the most aggressive predator in the room. How does emotional detachment keep you poor? We must also address the devastating impact this has on your financial and professional trajectory. In high-level corporate environments, business networking, and wealth generation, friction is the absolute currency of progress. High CPM environments, where the stakes are massive and the rewards are life-changing, require leaders who can navigate intense psychological pressure without fracturing. When high-value individuals observe you constantly withdrawing from difficult conversations, avoiding high-stakes negotiations, or cutting off colleagues due to minor misunderstandings, they do not see a person with strong boundaries. They see a biological liability. They quietly categorize you as someone who lacks the nervous system regulation required to handle massive success. They will smile at you, they will respect your need for space, but they will never invite you into the rooms where true power is consolidated. Your obsession with protecting your energy is quite literally keeping you poor, invisible, and utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of the marketplace. You must realize that emotional detachment is never a superpower if it is primarily driven by subconscious fear. True stoicism and supreme nervous system regulation require you to be fully present in the absolute chaos, fully exposed to the friction of reality, and yet remain completely immovable. That is true psychological power. What you are currently doing is the exact biological opposite. You are fleeing the battlefield before the fight even begins and proudly calling yourself a victor. Over time, this chronic avoidance leads to severe mental health interventions, because the primitive human brain simply cannot differentiate between a physical prison cell and a self-imposed emotional one. The biochemical results coursing through your veins are exactly the same: chronically high cortisol levels, severe adrenal fatigue, systemic inflammation, and an eventual devastating collapse of your baseline dopamine receptors. You become numb to the world, mistaking your clinical depression for inner peace. The mathematical cost of your inaction today is absolute and unforgiving. Your avoidant behavior is actively destroying your social capital and your mental resilience at this exact second. Every single interaction you avoid today creates a compounded psychological debt that you will be forced to pay back with severe anxiety tomorrow. You have less than a minute to completely reprogram this cognitive failure before your invisible prison is sealed shut. Your isolation becomes a permanent personality trait, and your identity is entirely erased from the social matrix. Listen closely to the final blueprint. How do you regulate your brain during social conflict? You have to break the biological code immediately. You must forcefully stop using highly weaponized therapy buzzwords to justify your chronic lack of social courage. Stop telling your peers that you are protecting your peace when the dark, uncomfortable truth is that you are simply terrified of being perceived, judged, or intellectually challenged. Authentic human connection is inherently messy, emotionally draining, and dangerously unpredictable. That is the necessary, non-negotiable price of admission to a meaningful, high-status life. If you want to develop impenetrable psychological resilience, you must willingly step back into the arena. You must let people in, you must endure the agonizing friction of disagreement, and you must rapidly learn to regulate your nervous system in the direct presence of conflict, not in the artificial, sterile absence of it. You need to start exposing yourself to microdoses of social discomfort immediately. The next time a conversation gets slightly tense, do not look for the exit. Force your feet to remain planted. Force your eyes to maintain contact. Notice the massive spike of adrenaline in your chest and simply let it exist without reacting to it. This is how you rebuild the neural pathways of resilience. You train your amygdala that friction does not equal death. You teach your nervous system that you are a competent, dangerous adult who can handle the fire without burning down the entire house. This is the only legitimate path to true emotional intelligence. Anything else is just a highly marketable delusion sold to you by people who want to keep you weak. The invisible prison is absolutely real, but now you possess the exact clinical blueprint to dismantle its walls brick by brick. You are no longer blind to your own biological cowardice, which means you no longer have an excuse to remain a victim of your own mind. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to master your primal psychology before the covert manipulators in your circle use your remaining behavioral blind spots to completely destroy you. Check the resources in the description to actively rebuild your cognitive framework from the ground up and start operating like the top 1% of human behavior experts. Stop lying to yourself about your boundaries. You are not protecting your peace, you are standing guard outside a cold, empty room. It is time to step out of the shadows, face the friction, and reclaim your biological dominance.